And so I hope this is really interesting to everyone because I could talk about this all day. But we'll just kind of go from the beginning and we'll go through all 10. So the first one is pretty obvious, I think, training and workshops. So being able to get people together for the content that is relevant for them, personalized to them, actually resonates, and giving them the hands-on training and expertise. Molly, I know you and I recently did a training workshop. What were some of your moments there? Or what do you want to add on this?
Absolutely. So one thing that I think is really important to address in driving seller adoption is taking these trainings. And although a training might be for an entire group of people, for example, Jackie and I just finished up hosting training. There was one in New Jersey, Chicago, London, and then a remote session. We took that same training and adjusted it to fit the regional needs of each group. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. Were there any of those minor regional tweaks that you remember that might be important? Because I'm sure, like thinking about that, like what do I need to look out for? Like what would I know to tweak?
Right, exactly. So, an example for the London training, when we were conducting the rest in the US, was that we wanted to make sure that we taught the sellers how to adjust their preferences to fit different time zones. So, if emails are going out, it's fitting their regional needs, as well as the format of date. So, a lot of different preferences. In addition to that, the vocabulary in some groups are different. So there is some vocabulary adjustments that needed to be done for the UK group in comparison to the group in the US.
Yeah, I really like that. So not just like here's the training, but making sure that it really resonates with the training execution of the individuals that are receiving it. I think that's really important, and I'm glad that you brought that up. Anything else on this before we go to number 2?
I think that for training and workshops, it's really important to note that training is really useful before go live of an implementation, but also as more features are being developed within the Microsoft ecosystem and the world in general, it's important to have continuous learning and training workshops going forward.
Oh, definitely. Like, I know in at least the dynamics space, there's two major releases every year, like wave 1 and wave 2. And now as a system admin, you can suppress that functionality or you can release it out. But having those like nugget refresher training, it really helps with reinforcement as well.
Yeah, and just management listening to the seller's needs to hear if there's questions of concern, bringing in a training workshop to be able to address those questions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I have a feeling we're going to come back to training. It's the reason why it's number 1 on the list. It probably will come up with a few others, but let's move on to the second one here. Role-specific customizations. I mentioned this a little bit on the technical side around like personalized dashboards, etc. But there really is more to that, where when you're designing a system, making it so that the users aren't bothered with things that they don't need. So there's been a few times I've seen, well, more than a few times, but I've seen these large implementations. The sales team signs in and they have like, let's say, project information that is not relevant to them. So it's just making the system heavier and not applicable for what they're trying to do. So hiding certain features or leveraging security roles to make it not available to them can really help. Or just making minor tweaks that, hey, we've created this dashboard specifically for your need, or we've created this report just for you. That can also go well with adoption. It goes a long way to show that what Molly was saying before, like leadership is hearing you. We know that you have very special needs and we've addressed them. Now, this doesn't mean, give the sellers every single little attribute that they're looking for, but it does mean listening to them and making strategic modifications to the CRM to really make it unique and a good experience for the sellers. Incentivize adoption. So this one is also interesting to me. And it, when done well, it's really, really, really nice. But what you want to do is make sure that people are recognized for their involvement in the change, that they are basically incentivized to adopt the change. And so I think about this in the terms of a seller situation where um, like you have your weekly reports with leadership where it's like, hey, here's the pipeline report, we're going to talk about these deals, etc. Just providing small praise in those settings of like, hey, all of Molly's opportunities are up to date, this looks amazing, like congratulations, like that can go a long way. Or you can even go as far as to like gamify the system, and whoever has closed the most leads is going to get a spot bonus, and things like that. So a lot of different ways that you can incentivize adoption. But it should be fun ultimately, right? People should be excited about this one. And yeah, you want to make sure that people are recognized for what they're doing well. Something else that I've been thinking about a lot regarding this topic is there's always those people that have like that innate knowledge from being in the legacy system for so long. They're kind of the expert at their craft, and then we're moving them to a new system where they might not have the street cred anymore. So making sure that we still recognize those people as, process experts or whatever will help them come along with the change and not feel like my expertise was left behind. Feedback loop. Again, we've talked about this a little bit, but making sure that you have an open dialogue with your sellers, because things change day to day, quarter to quarter, year to year, and you'll probably never be done with your CRM system. You need to just be able to collect that information and actively move forward, prioritize, etc. Molly, is there anything on these 3 additional ones you want to add in? Anything I've missed so far? What are your thoughts on feedback loops, maybe?
Yeah, I think for feedback loops, it's really important to have this continuous conversation, just as you were noting about there's never an end point. And so when we're giving these sellers a voice, we're really hearing their needs as individuals to better sell your products. And so it's important for everyone to be involved, not just the management or higher up view of what the CRM system looks like, but really the daily users and seeing how functionalities can change when using conversations with the delivery team as well.
Yeah, I think about like even some like low level tactical things. Like we always think about in go live, like where do I go to get help? Or where do I go for like to report a bug or something? Well, those things don't stop, right? You could get new hires, new points of view, even new leadership. And, where is the spot where we build out that backlog or that ongoing list of feedback that we're going to address? Some feedback might be large and unattainable, and that's okay, right? Like as long as we communicate back with the submitter, like, hey, got your submission, feedback was noted, here's why we're not going to do it, we're moving on. I think that helps. You need to close the loop on some levels. But you'd be surprised with how many great ideas come up, and you need to have a plan to collect those. And what is the cadence of what that communication is going to look like? Are you going to be committing to, quarterly updates, annual updates? It really depends on your organization, but committing to that and not letting things slip through the cracks. Integrate essential tools. Another thing I talked about on the more technical side, but nobody likes dual entry, especially sellers. Nobody wants to be in Outlook, have their email, and then have to track it into Dynamics. Like set up the rules that make their lives easier, make things integrate more smoothly. I've even seen, like, thinking about the feedback loop, I've seen some organizations go as far as to adding a button in Dynamics that says like feedback, and they're able to submit information directly in Dynamics. Another way that I've seen it be used is maybe with like a help desk portal, and those things actually end up in Dynamics. So a lot of different ways that you can kind of intermix all of these things. Molly, anything on tools? I think this one's pretty straightforward.
I think you hit on it, yeah, perfectly.
All right, cool. Showcase success stories. Kind of with Incentivize adoption on this one, but make sure that you're praising the sellers for using CRM, and then also try to measure what that success looks like. So if you're able to show, Molly enters all of her opportunities, the average deal length, as we can see in CRM, is, let's say 13 weeks. That's amazing. She's really consistent. And, because of this, she's like closing more business, closing more deals. That role model and success story, I think, will really resonate with people. And then you can, in private, talk to the individuals that are not fully adopting the CRM and say, hey, your average deal velocity is all over the map. And I can tell, you're entering opportunities the day before they close because we have these timestamps, and, how do we bridge the gap here? So just really quantifying and highlighting those benefits through stories really help. And sellers resonate with that. I think one of the most popular selling techniques is through storytelling. And so you're basically doing this here where you're selling the sellers on adopting CRM. So kind of fun there. CRM Mentors. Another great one here. I talked about it a little bit also with the Incentivize adoption, but in any like legacy system or even old CRM, you're going to have those people that know it inside and out, and they're subject experts, and they're really the go-to. And if we're moving to a new system, they might not be the go-to anymore. It might be beneficial to spend some time with them to become like one of the mentors for everyone else coming on board. It'll keep them with their street credibility. They'll be more inclined to accept the change, and then they'll be able to assist others. So you're kind of creating this like champions network. But just even if you don't go that route, just having people on your sales team that are like dedicated people that have been recognized for their adoption and have been recognized for, taking on this new application, and having them then mentor others gives them kind of like this leadership feeling, and it can go really well. I will say though, it is person specific, so make sure that you're picking the right individuals. I know in the seller community, sometimes people don't want that additional leadership. They see it as a burden to selling and to hitting their quotas. So picking the right CRM mentors is really important, especially in the seller community. So that's going to be more organization specific. Regular check-ins, super important, and also kind of goes with the feedback loop. I think the feedback loop is more on like the technical side, like, hey, what features do we want? What new information should we have in here, etc. Regular check-ins are more on the business side. So is sales leadership checking in with their sellers? Are they reviewing, what's working for you in the system? Are you getting what you need out of it? And are we providing the right reports for you to, do what you need to do, etc. So having that regular check-in hopefully is already happening in the organization. But if it isn't, it needs to be added so that you can get that pulse check in a very, organic way in kind of your one-on-ones. Losing my voice here. That's because we got 10, right? We still have 2 more to go. So coming in at number 9, highlighting the time-saving features. Sellers out of any CRM user they care the most about their time savings. That's what I've seen. So in their ideal world, for the most part, they would not be using really any tool at all. They would be on the phone, they would be in email, they would be closing deals, talking to people, winning business, etc. So now we're adding this additional thing where it's like, hey, we want to help you be more efficient and save time, but wait, we're making you do an additional step. So really like having that clarity of like, okay, they're going to be having to use CRM can help with some of these conversations. And then in that vein saying, hey, I know we're adding something to your plate, but here's all of the time saving features that we're giving to you. Here's all of the things like, yes, in the short term, it's probably more time, but in the long term, it's going to save you a lot of time. Great example is like opportunity cloning, right? So day one, yes, you have to enter in your opportunity. It requires that you put in the 7 things that are required, whatever. Might take you an additional 2 minutes right now, but a month from now, when you have the exact same opportunity coming up, maybe for the same client or a different client, one click, recreate it all. Like that would be a customization within CE, but totally doable, easy to do, and it would provide time savings in the future. So those are the sorts of things that I think sellers care about, and it's important to talk about with them. Lastly, continuous improvement. We've talked about this like 3 times now already. That's how important it is. But taking that feedback loop, taking the feedback from your regular check-ins and what information you have from your CRM mentors, and putting together a plan to update the system regularly based on changing needs is going to be important. It is something as simple as, hey, we are changing our seller territories. Yeah, that happens quite a bit, right? Instead of it being North America, we're now going to split into East and West, or we're going to be doing, here's the central region, whatever. On paper, super easy. But if you don't have the mental thought process of, hey, we are going to continuously improve, all of a sudden that's become a big lift. All of a sudden IT is concerned because we're going to have to, do a new security role or whatever, right? The tech changes are going to stay the same, but having a culture of embracing continuous improvement makes the entry point to that so much less of a barrier, right? If you know, hey, we're going to be continuously improving it, even if it's minor, or even if it's just the random territory adjustment, but just having that mental mind shift is going to set you up for more long-term success, because you won't have that barrier to entry. You won't have that, oh man, we've never changed before. We've never updated before. So just having that is going to really, really help. So those are our 10, a lot of overlaps. Molly, anything come to mind to you that we should double click on?
I think you really hit on everything. We can see how all of the different 10 ways that we were going over intertwine with one another. But really, this big focus that we've been talking about is the continuous improvement and embracing change. And by utilizing the different 9 ways, it all goes in turn to continuous improvement.
Yeah, the thing that I also want to double click on, because you're right, they all kind of go into continuous improvement. Something that we didn't touch on that much is persona specific needs. So the seller culture in, I'll just use a very generic example, but B2B is going to be different than B2C. And, is your organization extremely competitive or extremely collaborative? Like, what does your seller persona look like? And that impacts all of these, right? So if you are a super competitive organization, those success stories and literally showing like this person had, highest sales for this month and literally showing the rankings, that's going to work there. But if you're a very collaborative organization, that way of showcasing success stories is not going to work or resonate. That's going to be contradictory. Feedback loops. Again, if it's, hey, I want this to work for my specific use case, that's okay if it is a very competitive or individualized sales group. But then how do you make sure that that specific need works for all of the other specific needs? Like, you'd have to have a good cohesive look at it. And then it always goes back to training, right? If you understand your seller persona, you're going to be able to have better training and workshops around training. So I'm thinking about like a highly competitive, highly like walled off sales team. Sometimes they won't even bring up scenarios for us to work through because they don't want their teammates, well, not really, they don't even see them as teammates, but they don't want their competition to hear that scenario, right? So perhaps with that, it's more one-on-one touches. Like, I'm going to show you directly how this works, etc. Or you got, less silos, less competition, and more of a collaboration focus. Oh my gosh, they would in the same room together, talking about a specific deal, brainstorming it, etc. So the one thing that I think really impacts all of these points is, like, what is your seller persona? What things do they care about? What environment are they in? And that's going to dictate all of these things and all of these levers that you can pull.